There's no possible way they can say, maybe we went a little bit too hard on this. We're going to pump the brakes and come up with some better ideas so people like us more. No, they're going to continue to steamroll you and your kids, children, with gender neutral toys and gender affirming care, surgeries, abortions, all of this stuff, and they're not going back. What is up? My name is Eric. This channel is called Report and Opine. I am back. This, of course, is the epicenter for all of your current and captivating coastal elite chaos. So please hit that subscribe button, like the video, ring the notification bell, leave a comment or two, share this with a friend. Let's go. So I just did a video about this video embedded in an article from ABC News titled Record Number of Anti-LGBTQ Legislation Filed in 2023.
Shout out my homosexual niggas out there. Yeah. Shout out my niggas like dick in the ass, nigga.
I know that shit hurt.
Shout out the whole Labicotia, nigga. I know some of you niggas don't be supporting the Labicotia, but nigga like me, Labicotia supporter.
Now, obviously, the video is just a random piece of propaganda. It doesn't have anything to do with the scary anti-LGBTQ laws or whatever. So let's take a look at the article and see what they're really talking about here. They say, this year, state legislators introduced and passed a record-breaking number of legislative efforts targeting LGBTQ healthcare, access to public accommodations, inclusion in education, and more in the U.S. So I'm not sure, I can't be certain, but what I think they're saying is that there are some laws being passed that are making sure that kids don't cut their junk off and men don't go into women's rooms and they don't start teaching weirdo pornographic books in schools. But I don't know. And it's also very strange that they can't for one split second think that the laws are sweeping the country is because none of this makes any sense.
This doesn't make any sense.
They just, all it takes for these people to be correct is just for them to think or say something. And any reaction to that, anybody saying, no, we're not going to do that, that is anti. Oh, I can't believe you would do that. Aren't you about freedom? I thought you loved freedom. Meanwhile, they were forcing pharmaceutical nonsense on everybody, but that is a different story. It continues. The American Civil Liberties Union said it recorded at least 508 bills impacting the community in 2023, adding 84 of these bills were passed into law. So obviously the American Civil Liberties Union is a completely corrupt operative organization, and there was at least 508 bills impacting. I mean, that could just be anything. Like, laws impact everybody. You're trying to say that it was an attack on your community or whatever. Impacting means absolutely nothing, right? Every single law that is written impacts somebody. There's reasons why we have this stuff, and they just can't deal with the idea that this thing they made up only a handful of years ago isn't going over as smoothly as I guess they thought it would. The rise in legislation coincided with an increase in threats of violence against the LGBTQ community. It's all just made up. An increase in threats? Anything could be considered a threat for these people, right? A mean tweet. A tweet that says men are not women could get you kicked off the internet, and that is what they're considering a threat. Meanwhile, they're literally trying to mutilate the bodies and minds of children, but the threat is coming from the people who are saying no. It's just mind-boggling, really. With federal security agencies sounding the alarm. However, activists say that despite the record-breaking wave of anti-LGBTQ bills, other lawmakers have stepped up to combat such effort. So you just started going along with this narrative. Some people said, no, we're not going to do that. And now it's just, it's just through the roof. We've also witnessed incredible moments of strength, and states and communities across the country have made sure this political assault does not go unnoticed or is made any easier. So it's clear that nobody wants it, but they're going to keep doing it. It's the most basic thing. It's the big ask, like I always say. It doesn't matter that everybody has a right to protest peacefully, as they say.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
But it doesn't matter that people don't like this. They're just going to keep doing it. And it's all clearly AstroTurf. It's kind of similar to Rome. They're all very similar in the idea in the fact that they only want to gain control and power. And when you can convince somebody of this, that is clear that you have complete control. Like the 3 kids we saw in the last video, right? When they're talking like that, it's very clear that they are not. I mean, a child can see through this, but it's very clear that whoever is on the outside has complete control of these people now. It's ridiculous. And they have this cute little infographic here. Everybody loves an infographic. States that pass legislation impacting the LGBTQ community in 2023. And they love the weasel words, impacting, right? It's supposed to sound really strong, but it doesn't mean anything. The vast majority of legislation passed across the country has impacted gender-affirming care for minors, blocking trans youth from accessing treatments, in some cases including puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgeries. So, yeah, I mean, I can't believe we actually made it this far. It should not require a law, but yeah, you should not be. It doesn't look, and I get it. This is all, can make it all about the kids, and kids can't consent to puberty blockers, which is 110,000% true. But it doesn't matter. You could be 6 or 68 or 80. The truth remains the same. You're not going to just magically change. Ask Caitlyn, right? A 60-year-old man turns into a woman. Now his boobs are getting in the way of his golf swing. It doesn't make any sense.
This doesn't make any sense.
These laws do not restrict such treatment for cisgender or intersex youth. So they throw in a word that they just made up there, like Latinx or whatever, but yeah, they don't restrict treatment, because if a regular kid is not pretending that he wants to become a little girl, or a little girl is pretending that they want to become a boy, if you're talking about an actual, medically necessary thing for a little kid who's deficient on something, that would be completely different from somebody who watched too many TikTok videos. For transgender people in our families across the country, 2023 was a devastating year of attacks on our safety, our dignity, and our freedom. And yeah, they care so much about freedom. These are the same people walking around in a mask 3-4 years later and demanding that you all comply with this. But now you want to talk about freedom? Give it a rest, bro. I can't even understand how these people sleep at night.
I'm triggered.
The spreading bans and restrictions on our health care are an especially acute threat to our liberty and well-being. We only expect to grow more dangerous in the next year, meaning there's going to be people who are going to say, no. Now, of course, they're going to call it a threat, which I guess you could. No, it's not a threat. It's just reality. They are threatened by reality. Supporters of these laws believe that gender transitioning is harmful to youth and adults. Yeah, it is. Right? Who? Of course it is. There's only a handful of brainwashed people who are saying, oh, we need to cut our dicks off. What are you talking about, bro? Some patients should wait until they are older to make this kind of health decision. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, again, the truth doesn't change. Whether you're 1 or 100 is going to be the same. In a March post on X, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said he signed the bill in his state that banned doctors from starting hormone therapy for transgender youth under the age of 18 to ensure we protect the health and well-being of Georgia's children. Yeah, and anybody who doesn't feel, I mean, we shouldn't need that, like I said. But if you're literally of the mindset that kids under 18 should be pumping themselves full of hormones and drugs and mutilating their body, that makes you a creepy person. Scott. Here's another infographic. States that pass laws impacting LGBTQ healthcare. And as we know, healthcare is just like the same thing they do with abortion. It's like, oh, reproductive care, reproductive justice for transgender people. This is how stupid they think people are, which I guess is good because most people aren't quite this stupid, but the ones that are have fallen victim to this weirdo agenda. I mean, this is a deep rabbit hole. I do not know where it ends. As Georgians, parents, and elected leaders, it is our highest responsibility to safeguard the bright, promising futures of our kids, and SB 140 takes an important step in fulfilling that mission. He continued, yeah, I mean, say what you will about Brian Kemp, but yeah, when you're right, you're right. In September, a judge allowed the state to enforce the ban after a suit was filed, the Associated Press reported. Major national medical associations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Child Adolescent Psychiatry, and over 20 more agree that gender-affirming care is safe, effective, beneficial, and medically necessary. And there it is. I've said this plenty of times. A lot of people know it's obvious that the medical establishment is completely compromised. They're completely corrupt. I mean, you can, oh, well, you're not a doctor, right? It's the same thing with Rona. You're not a doctor. You can't say Joe Rogan ate horse medication. All of these weirdo organizations say that it's safe and effective. You're telling me, you want me to believe that the American Academy of Pediatrics thinks that it makes sense for a little kid, however delusional they are, to start mutilating their bodies and eating pills that they will have to take for the rest of their life? Nobody is coming off those pills. Nobody is coming off puberty blockers and saying, well, that was weird. I just want to go back to normal. It's too late. You can't do that. Nobody takes hormone and then just gets off it. You're going to turn into a weirdo or an even more strange monster than you already are. And I don't blame a lot of these people for the most part, because clearly there is not a higher power, but a weirdo political being, which I guess in their case is a higher power, because a lot of these politicians and stupid people look to government as God, but that is a completely different story. Transgender youth are more likely to experience anxiety, depressed mood, and suicidal ideation and attempts, often due to gender-related discrimination. Yeah, so, okay, right? It's awkward for everybody being a kid, but when you force these weirdo beliefs on people, when you tell them that all your problems are because you're really a girl instead of a boy or vice versa, of course they're going to have problems, and that's what they want. They're driving chaos. They are driving division. They're driving ambiguity. They want nothing more than to have everybody confused, smoke weed all day, don't stand up to anything, be a fentanyl zombie, abort your baby. If you don't, cut his dick off. And they cite the CDC here like that's a trustworthy organization. Gender-affirming hormone therapy has been proven to improve the mental health of transgender adolescents and teenagers, according to a recent study in the New England Journal of Medicine. At least 14 laws impacting the LGBT community, including restrictions on drag performances, LGBTQ content, and why you're drawing the conclusion, right? You guys are the ones saying that you got to stop doing this because it's attacking the LGBTQ community. Most people are just talking about the kids, but you're drawing the conclusion that the LGBTQ plus community is coming after the kids. So it's always like that, though, right? Every single time, it's constantly the soft bigotry of low expectations. Well, why are you putting metal detectors at schools? Because that's going to affect the black kids. Well, what does that say about you, bro? They don't get it. Or maybe they do, and it's completely evil. I will never know. Moving on. The Ohio legislature passed a bill restricting certain transgender rights for minors in the state on December 13th and is being considered on the desk of Republican Governor Richard DeWine. Which ones? Certain transgender rights? Which ones? I mean, we're all people. We all have the same rights no matter how you slice it. Again, no pun intended. Everybody's the same. You wanted extra, and some people are saying we're not really on board with that. And so you're saying that some things are being restricted. Which ones? You got to name it. You're talking about Ohio, but of course they won't. It doesn't matter. Just wear it. In Wisconsin, the legislature is considering legislation restricting transgender participation in sports. However, Democratic Governor Tony Evers has vowed to combat legislation he considers harmful to the community. He previously vetoed a bill that would outlaw gender-affirming care for minors. So yeah, veto it. It falls right in line. And I actually made a video a long time ago that got banned from Instagram, and then it went back, and then it blew up, basically saying that they are coming at you from every angle, right? So ideally, you would just get rid of the kid before it's even passed through the birth canal. But if you can't do that, then you're going to turn him into a transformer. And if you can't do that, you're going to turn him gay. And if you can't do that, then he is going to be on the domestic terror list. However, several states have instead passed protections for the LGBTQ community this year, including Minnesota, Michigan, New York, and California. So when it's the weirdo left-wing agenda pushers, it's protection. But when it's somebody saying, let's not cut the junk off a kid, that's a restriction. It's just ridiculous. The framing is through the roof here. And like I always say, you kind of got to give it to them, because despite the fact that all of this flies directly in the face of reality, they're going to push it. And they're going to push it so hard. And they're going to call you crazy if you don't buy it. The silver lining in this year of challenges is the way LGBTQ people and our allies have showed up for our community and for everyone's fundamental freedoms. Okay. Yeah. The freedom to mutilate. Sure. Fine. You can get a tattoo. You can cut your junk off. That's fine. I disagree with it because it doesn't matter what age you are, but at least leave the kids out of it. said Sarah Kate Ellis, president and CEO of the LGBTQ media advocacy group GLAAD. She continued pointing to LGBTQ support in pop culture, politics, and religious spaces. Using our visibility, voices, and power, LGBTQ people have so much to be grateful for and continue to fight for in 2024. So right there, she's clearly saying we're using everything. We're using pop culture, Netflix, movies, Hollywood, which we did for decades. It's not quite working anymore, but we're going to come at you from every angle. We are taking the agenda. And I don't know what it's going to take, right? Tim Pool is always talking about CW2 and all this stuff, and I think we're living it. Right? Like, it's not going to come. It's not going to be muskets, obviously. It's going to be an informational war. And we're here. They are quite literally fighting for the minds, the souls of kids. It's crazy. The protections include historic civil rights amendment protecting LGBTQ people. And so it's protection when you want to cut the junk off a kid. It's a restriction when you don't. The Equality Act, which this is another one of the Equality Act, the CARES Act, gender affirming care, reproductive care. I mean, it's all just through the roof with the dystopian Democrat doublespeak. But the Equality Act, which would protect LGBTQ people from discrimination on a federal level, no, that was already a thing. But they constantly do this. They create new laws because they failed to enforce the old laws, and they want to make sure that some weirdos that they have successfully brainwashed think they're doing something. I don't know what this is actually for. Anyways, people from discrimination on a federal level was reintroduced in Congress by 4 Democratic legislators amid a nationwide rise in anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment that has led to an increase in violence. That's just not true. At least link something there. It's not true. However, the act has yet to gain traction because even some of the weirdo lefty Democrat establishment shill hacks, they're saying this is a step too far because obviously they're going to lace every single bill with a boatload of poison pills and then call it the Equality Act to trick you into thinking that
I'm triggered.
Despite these setbacks, however, we have still achieved numerous wins for equality, from Minnesota passing a conversion therapy ban to Michigan enacting its historic civil rights amendment protecting LGBTQ. Protecting them from what? And how? I mean, they're constantly talking about race. They're race baiting, black, white, segregation. Nikki Haley is the devil because she didn't say slavery was the reason for the Civil War. Meanwhile, you're comparing cutting the junk off kids to the same thing as the civil rights movement. It's just despicable. Looking ahead to next year, we will remain steadfast in the fight against legislation targeting people's lives and the radical hate that comes with it. So there you have it. Looking ahead, they will remain steadfast, meaning they're nowhere near done. They are not backing down. Their heels are dug in. Like I've said 100 million times. I guess I've said a whole bunch of things over and over again. But as long as they're going to do it, I'm going to keep doing it. There's no possible way they can say, maybe we went a little bit too hard on this. We're going to pump the brakes and come up with some better ideas so people like us more. No, they're going to continue to steamroll you and your kids, children, with gender-neutral toys and gender affirming care, surgeries, abortions, all of this stuff, and they're not going back. We're here, we're in it. We're going to look back in a decade or two and say, wow, that was CW2. Cutting the junk off kids, a wide open border, removing your political opponent from ballots along with a laundry list of other crooked, corrupt things, that was definitely CW2.